Steve.
Yes.
And Robert. And Clark here. We have a big shortage of females here.
Yeah, but we do.
Yeah, Raymond. And we have Aaron. And Paul. And Captain Parks. And we have Councilman Frank. And it's we. Hello.
How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for joining.
Absolutely.
Okay. So next on the agenda, approve the previous meeting minutes. And if you remember the last meeting minute, we put off the approving the minutes, and you included those, Aaron, in the. Saw it somewhere.
Yeah, it's February minutes.
It's February minutes
first,
from-
Yeah.
And then at the next meeting, we'll do April's minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I made myself a copy. Does anyone have anything to add or questions? So, if there are no questions or additions,
Can I move to accept the minutes?
okay, thank you. And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's done. Thank you. And so we'll do this, I'm sorry, last meeting.
And this
minutes
one on the next
at the
one.
next one. Okay. Thank you.
Is that gonna be regular where we're 2 months?
No, because nobody reviewed them last time, so they got behind.
Okay.
So,
Thanks. We can set them in next February. We were wondering what we did to scare all the women away.
Susan, thank you for coming. Okay, next on the agenda, we would invite any attending citizens who wanted to make a comment, but we have none. So we can move on to that. So the next, look, before we go any further, well, I want to apologize to Captain Perks and to Aaron for not getting the agenda put together in time to get it out. That I should have kept track of that, and I apologize. So
No worries, we got it out.
well, we got it. It was running a bit late.
And Ann is emailing her the links to join in virtually.
Oh,
So
good.
she will be joining us shortly.
Okay,
I just sent her the email.
so the next item of business is old business, and the first bullet I have is status update regarding action item 2, and action item 2 is the on-street parking policy that we sent up to through the chain.
Correct.
Do we have any update on that? No.
It has been sent out the chain.
I had some interaction about it. If you want me to report
Yes,
that now.
please.
So 2 weeks, our block did a petition, which you've got copies of. Susan did the copy.
thank
So
you.
we did a
that's what this
petition
is.
urging,
Okay.
it was addressed to the mayor, to the city manager, and Captain Curtis, Steve Curtis, urging them to support the proposal that we sent in. A couple of days later, I interacted with city manager Peoples, and her question was, what proposal? So that was 2.5 weeks after our meeting, when it had started, when it was sent off, that it was reported the city manager didn't know anything about it. So then she got involved in that. I think spoke with Councilman Franklin at this point about what was happening, and he could fill some more in that. But then her and I followed up on that, so she got a copy of that and said it will go through the channels, basically.
Okay, so it's on its way.
I hope.
Okay.
Yeah. I am not assured of anything until.
Well, one concern that I have is that that we find if there are questions or if someone needs to appear before the city council and make a presentation regarding these recommendations, we would like to know about it so that we can prepare.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it gets to that, you will have ample time for that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would make its way down to me, and then it would be disseminated out.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think maybe, and I had the same sort of question for the next 2 items, but maybe some feedback. It was received. Here's sort of our timetable to review it. I think just knowing that.
Exactly.
And I don't know where that would come from. David, how would we get that information?
Yeah, so let me just explain a little bit of how the process is going to work. Right now, council is have on its agenda items how we're going to address recommendations from any boards or commission, including the Traffic Advisory Commission. However, I have talked to Dr. Peoples, and obviously this has been submitted to Chief Curtis, and it has made its way to Dr. Peoples. Chief Curtis and his team will make recommendations based off of the recommendation that has been proposed by the Traffic Advisory Commission. That would come to Dr. Peoples, and then it would be up to Dr. Peoples to put it on the agenda for council, whether that is during a work session or during a general session or a normal session in order for us to vote on it. So it's going to take, it takes a little bit of time in order for the police staff in order to review it, make recommendations based off of what they believe is accurate or necessary for the community, and then for it to come to council. So at least in regards to this one, I have been at least granted or been provided reassurances that it will make its way to council in due time here, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. We've only had 2 council meetings since April 17th. Three technically, but that first one was April 18th, the day after this recommendation was adopted by the Traffic Advisory Commission. And so as a result, it takes a little bit of time. So I'm not too worried about it being stonewalled or about any delay. But I do think that for me to give to you and other boards and commissions that I sit on information as to how a recommendation will be presented to council, that's council's prerogative to figure out how we're actually going to handle that. And I would imagine within the next couple of weeks, we're going to make a determination or at least an assessment of how that's going to be handled. So I can't really speak to any future recommendations, how they're going to be handled, but at least on this one as relates to the parking around the school and the library, we are proceeding and it will make its way to council.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman, can I ask you, so I was at the last work session and most of the city meeting, and what I noted was that other council folks reported on their commissions. So I have concern, with how this sort of feels, that we're not being treated very seriously. And I don't know if you've ever reported on what we're doing. You didn't that night, and it felt like, we've been working on some pretty important things, I think, and yet no update for the council was given when sustainability had a report. I forget who the other councilman that had a report on their commission. And what can we do to improve that or something? I mean, it feels like to me, that it's nice for a meeting here, but I don't know if we can get more out of what we're doing.
Is your concern council being updated on what is occurring at the traffic?
And that's what I observed, that that there was no report. That wasn't so.
Yeah, so for the most part, council is updated on what's going on, whether it's informal conversations or, like, for instance, I talk to Mayor Arnold about this commission all the time because I think she has, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, so please don't take it as that, but I think she has concerns about the scope of the work that is being done here and exactly whether it fits with council's goals and initiatives, and also staff time and resources if we are able to accomplish, especially when you look at complete streets. It's a large undertaking that is going to take a lot of staff support and a lot of staff resources. And I think that's incumbent upon council to figure out exactly what is the role of council in these boards and commissions, and also direction. So what I've requested is that we as liaisons be granted more authority to help designate exactly what is the goal of each boards and commission, and that we direct it a little bit more. I feel like, I'll be honest with you, I feel like a glorified babysitter sitting here. I don't feel like I have a lot of authority. I don't feel like I have that much prerogative in exactly the direction that any boards or commission goes. I just sit here and then I report back to council what I think is necessary in relation to what could potentially be coming before council. But I really have no direction or authority to say, hey, that's too broad, that's too advanced. We don't have initiative to do that as a council. And so I think it's incumbent upon council to say, hey, these are the goals and the initiatives that we want you to handle, and that we think that we have resources to implement or to research or to effectuate as a city. But as of right now, and I might be in the minority with council, but I feel like I have absolutely zero authority on this on these boards and commission. All I do is sit here and report back to council what is going on and advocate for what I think is necessary based off of what the board and commission is going towards. But other than that, I really can't direct it. I can't guarantee or designate meetings, subcommittee meetings. And I think that needs to be more legislative. And I think council needs to have more of a say in that. And so I've requested that we have a more full-on comprehensive discussion as to what our roles and responsibilities are as liaisons. I would like to direct it a little bit more. I would like to help set the council, to set the commission meetings to help with, like, for instance, Captain Perks and his time and resources, especially with the subcommittee meetings. But I feel like I'm hamstrung here because I'm only one council member out of 7. And for me to say, hey, I think this is a good idea, yeah, that's my one opinion of a council member, but I don't have authority or direction from the other 6 council members necessarily.
Is that part of the charter review process at all, or is this a separate?
Well, it's ordinance. It's not necessarily, granted, while a lot of the commissions and boards are within the charter review, the liaison scope is within an ordinance and can easily be amended by council. And we just did amend it just briefly, but we didn't really set the scope or the roles and responsibilities other than we kind of just sit here. I wish there was more. I would rather us have more of a legislative action where you see these are subcommittee hearings or committee hearings where we actually take in data, we take in information, and we make recommendations to the council as a whole. And it would be then incumbent upon the council member, whoever the liaison is, to usher it through council based off of the information and data that's collected at the commission hearing or the commission.
So we certainly support what you're saying. I think until very recently, our role was quite small. The things that came before us were yield signs and stop signs and speed limits and that kind of thing. This is a much, much bigger initiative. And I think we're kind of feeling our way.
Yep.
I think we all sincerely want to do the right thing for the city of Webster Groves. We're not sure what that is. So yeah, we're with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And I know that you came and spoke to us, and that's one thing that this council has done is that we at least get each board or commission in front of council at least once a year, and maybe it'll be more as time goes on, but at least once a year in order to get an understanding of what the commission or board proposes and what they want. But I think that especially on something like Complete Streets, we owe it to you to give you more direction and also to give you an understanding of what staff resources and time are. Because like you said, this is a large undertaking, and I think it's going to take quite a bit of staff resources and time and frankly, budget money in order for us to complete any of the Complete Streets. I'm really excited to see the diet on Elm Avenue going forward, and I know that we're just broaching that, and we will have funding for it after next budget year. But that's a big thing, and I also think one thing that I think this board or commission, when I think of direction and potential avenues, would be to gain community support and education throughout the community as to potential things that you want to do, whether it's related to Complete Streets or whether it's related to South Elm, doing more community presentations, more community feedback, whether that's through surveys or in-person presentations. It's that kind of stuff. That's something that the Green Space has been very effective at. They have learned that the more education or the more community support that they have, the more likely they are to get council support. And I think that's something that this commission could try to adopt as they move forward, especially on something like Complete Streets.
But that's sort of a chicken and egg type thing. I mean, we put together a proposal for the city to say, hey, we want to do this. We haven't given specific projects. Ours is this is sort of a way of life. And that really needs, we could spend all this time doing stuff and then, what the administration changes and there's no appetite for it. I mean, what we're saying is the city needs to get behind this, or we're recommending the city does, because first of all, X, Y, and Z cities are already doing it. We're way behind that already. We put together sort of a, not a specific project or budget. It's just, this is how we're going to act going forward with projects. We're going to take these things into consideration. So, I mean, we could do all kinds of, presentations and stuff like that for the city, for 50 or 100 people. But I guess I'm asking the city council to say, hey, we're looking, and I think what we were told is that we'll put this forward. Marie's going to send it out to the departments. They're going to say how it would affect them and come back with recommendations. And then it would come back to us to say, hey, do we want to change it? And then it goes back to city council. But if what you're saying, we've given our recommendation, then the changes are made, then it goes to council. That's a different process that was outlined to us. But either one of those, I think we just sort of need to understand what's
Clark, I'm a little confused. So by the two differentiations that you just made there?
Yeah, so I think what you said is, like the one Steve was talking about earlier was that we made the recommendation. You're going to make some changes, then it's going to go to city council to vote on.
So I don't think, at least based off of my understanding of how the process works, and during my 5 years on council now, I've never seen a recommendation from a board or commission be changed. It could be recommended, amendments to the recommendation, for instance, could be made by the staff. And that's then up to council how they want to proceed. But the recommendation as adopted by the board or commission should come before council. And then any amendments, either whether they be recommended by staff or recommended by an individual council member or council members, should then be
So that was the second one, was that the staff would be making recommendations. It would come back to the subcommittee, which is it's a combination of sustainability and traffic advisory. They would look at those recommendations, say, hey, do we want to adopt those into our recommendation or not? And then it would go back to council is sort of the way I understood the process to be.
Yeah, I think Complete Streets is, based off of the budgetary, but the large budgetary potentials here. I think that it could be a little bit more piecemeal than a large recommendation, a full-fledged, comprehensive Complete Streets recommendation. Now, I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing to have that Complete Streets recommendation, and then for a determination with council staff and this subcommittee to determine which ones do we prioritize and move forward on. Now, I think that's a different question based off of one-time staff resources and then also budgets. But I'm not opposed to the idea of us saying, hey, let's do a full-on Complete Streets initiative and then determine from a piecemeal perspective, what can we afford and what can we do as a city? Does that make sense?
I think that the way it's written, I mean, that's really sort of through your budget process and through this, the Department of Public Works, they would be making those projects. What their prioritized are, I mean, like normal, but it's just going to have a different. It's going to have a different guidelines of what those projects need to look like. You know what I mean? So it's like we're not just going to repave. If we're going to repave Elm, we're going to look at, okay, are there conditions? Before we just repave it, do we need to make the changes that are in the guidelines to make it streets for all? Does it have sidewalks? Does it have this? Does it have that? And if it doesn't have that, then they have to get an exception to go forward with the project. I mean, that's the way our policy is written. If that makes sense. It's not like, hey, we're doing this Complete Streets policy or ordinance, whatever it is, and there's a $5 million price tag to it. There's no price tag to it. It's just going forward. This is how we're going to operate in the city when we're doing a street project.
Sure, and I think I understand what you're trying to say. You're saying effectively it's additional regulations or rules that we need to abide by and whenever we're redoing any street.
Guidelines, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, but those guidelines do come with a price tag, I think.
Sure.
There's a potential, right? And so I think that while it's a guideline, it's not set in stone that the council or the city has to follow it. So I think it's going to be incumbent upon the city council to determine their priorities as to how they want to proceed based off of those guidelines.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page. To be fair, I owe it to you guys to determine exactly what the process will be, especially in regards to this complete streets. And so I will have discussions with the mayor and the city council as a whole to determine what that process will look like, especially with something like complete streets, but even something more minor, such as the recommendation in regards to the parking around the high school. I think that I think it's fair for you all, the time and effort that you guys expend on this committee, for me to be able to explain to you how the process will and should work. And I can't right now tell you at the next recommendation that you present how it will actually go. I can tell you how this particular recommendation will go, but I do think that it's fair not only for this commission, but any other board and commission, any recommendation they put forward, how it gets before council in the process before it actually gets before council, what that actually entails.
And
it's just kind of right now, it's just kind of it's a little wishy-washy to me, and I'm not sure exactly how to answer the question because I don't specifically or explicitly know.
Yeah, and I think with complete street, I would think next meeting, it would be nice to say, hey, Dr. Peoples received it. She's given it to Public Works, to the police, to whatever. She's asked them to get back her recommendations in 60 days or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Whatever the sort of the actions are, just so we know it's moving forward.
Absolutely.
We're gonna get to the elm, to the North Elm here in a minute on our list, but that's been, probably 3 or 4 months, I think. And so I don't think we've heard any feedback on that one.
Two things on the parking. One is Dr. Peoples asked me if it was our intention that it be joined to the complete streets. In other words, if it's a combined thing. I told her I didn't think that was our intention. But it is interesting in light of the conversation, because my reply was, well, if there's nothing tied to it, then complete streets can just be a feel-good kind of thing. Yeah, you pass it, but are we doing anything? So I don't think it's our intention to tie the parking thing to it. But I do hope that if they go forward with complete streets, I like what you said about that passing complete streets means taking it seriously. I mean, my own words. The next thing I want to ask you is, so, I have folks willing to write council folks to present their opinion. When would be the time to do that?
At any time, I think it's important that anyone who has a comment or concern present it to city council members. And you can either do that individually or you can do that as a whole, and we would receive it. I think on a bi-weekly basis, we usually receive it, or our city clerk is amazing and she will send out anything extremely important immediately through our general email address. Yeah. But especially on this recommendation, right? It is going to make its way to council, is my understanding. And so I think starting to contact other city council members and explain why you think it's important to be passed or why you want it to pass would be most beneficial, most advantageous as we proceed. Okay. I'm just one vote. And while I like to think that I'm persuasive, I'm not that persuasive sometimes. And so the more community input, especially on something like this, because, I talked to Steve about this now for several years, and Steve's been advocating to make this this change for over 20 years, and it's kind of stonewalled. And part of that is because the Traffic Advisory Commission really wasn't active. I don't know. It appears that our former city manager really didn't want to touch it. I'm not sure what the appetite is of the other council members on something like this. But I think that it's a good recommendation. I'm okay with it going in front of council. I'm okay voting on it, but I do think it takes another 3 votes besides mine in order.
So do other council members have the proposal yet? Or if they get an email tonight, will they say, what proposal are you talking about? Or how do they get the proposal?
Well, the proposal probably has not been circulated to council yet because it's still working its way through staff. But I can ask
when that happens, that the emails can follow that.
Say that again.
Can you let me know when that
Oh,
happens?
absolutely,
Maybe I'll
absolutely,
follow that, because I don't think it makes sense to send them out ahead of time.
absolutely.
Councilman Franklin, I was just gonna say, sorry.
Go
I
ahead,
apologize
Jerry.
if I apologize if I missed this, but is there gonna be an opportunity for the Traffic Advisory Commission to discuss, why or where, or any background or any more than what's written on that proposal itself with the council, like make a presentation of any kind, or is this gonna happen kind of outside of our involvement in any way?
Well, it would definitely need to be voted on by council. So as a result, there would be a presentation opportunity. And I'm not sure if this would require a public hearing. I would have to ask our city attorney on something like this. But regardless, I see no reason why you, as the Traffic Advisory Commission, since it's your recommendation that you would not be able to present something in front of council explaining why you guys decided to take this up and why you guys passed it as a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And for the record, I appreciate your candor. I agree that it would be nice, from my perspective, if you had more authority or ability to kind of help us manage the expectations and just on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, how I would like to see it is for us as individual council members. It's like, okay, I'm the liaison to the Traffic Advisory Commission, and would be my job to say, hey, this is where I think you're going to get the most support from council, or the most initiative, or the most most take from what council might be wanting to do based off our goals and initiatives. And it's my job then to make sure that it gets ushered through whatever amendments or whatever is necessary in order to get those 4 votes. I would rather me or any other individual council member take that initiative. But as of right now, I really don't feel like I have that authority to say, hey, Traffic Advisory Commission, I think that's beyond the scope, or I really don't think this is going to pass council. I don't think you should do it this way. I think you should do it that way, because at that point, it seems like I am now advocating for what I want rather than what council wants as a whole. And I would rather say, let me advocate for what I want and you guys want, and then put the onus on me as a council member to try to get it passed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I'm glad Steve took the horse and buggies out of this, right, and put cars in there. Updated it.
Councilman Franklin, one more question.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that one of the challenges here is that we're kind of redefining the roles of some of these commissions. And one of the things that I struggle with a bit is that traditionally we have been reactive. We have information that requests from the city residents, but primarily we work with the police department to satisfy the needs of, again, speed limits and stop signs and that kind of thing. And that's a very reactive role. If we begin to look at things like complete streets, we're in a more proactive role, and that doesn't quite feel comfortable. So one of the things that would be extremely helpful when you talk to the council about our roles, that's one that we would like to understand is how proactive do we want to be versus how reactive do we want to be? We'll play either part. We're not sure which one to play.
I think that's completely fair, right? Because you guys are spending your time and resources on this stuff. And I don't want you to waste your time or resources, or to make a recommendation that has absolutely no chance of, or to spend that time and resources on making a recommendation that has absolutely no chance of even making it to council or getting, a vote of 7-0 against it. Yeah. So I think that's where I think we as liaisons should be more informative as to what the role and direction of council wants you to be, in order that you guys aren't wasting your time. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go forward and say, hey, we as a community, or we as a Traffic Advisory Commission really want to do complete streets, even though all 7 members of the council don't want to. Again, it's your commission. And I think that if that's what you really believe that the community needs and wants, then I would say, hey, go for it. Now,
we can't do that without the city council.
Well, you can adopt a complete streets, right, and make that recommendation to city council.
No, I mean that's what we're doing.
Yeah, but I'm just saying
they're 7-0 against it, we're not going to go forward.
But and this is where the legislative process works, right? I mean, just because the council votes 7-0 doesn't mean that your work was for naught. like, I think that it's important. I think that's the whole point of democracy to some degree, is that sometimes, these recommendations aren't going to succeed. But I do think that it's important for put council members on the record and make a vote, and for us to proceed based off of the recommendations that you as a subcommittee, a sub-legislative body effectively are doing.
Yeah, I'm not, I guess I misunderstood you. I mean, we can't really go forward with the policy. We can go forward trying to adopt the policy.
Correct.
And I want to amend what Chris said, because I think most of the people on this commission want to be proactive and not reactive. And if it comes back that you're going to be in a reactive mode, we might be turning in our pink slips.
Well, no, I think I will say this from you got the direction from council that they were on board for the complete streets, and they've obviously okayed the subcommittee that has been adopted with the green space or with sustainability. And so moving forward on that, I think you got at least an initial, hey, council wants to do this as a whole. Now the question is the details, right? And I think that we owe it to you to determine what those details are. That way you're not wasting your time, and we're not wasting what council doesn't want to do or doesn't have the appetite to do. And I don't know exactly how to, and that's what I think we are trying to figure out, exactly how to be a little bit more direct with our boards and commissions as to saying, hey, this is what we want you to investigate. This is the recommendations we want you to bring forward to us based off of the data and the science and the evidence and the community input that you receive.
Do you think that, so like when the council votes on issues, often there's 3 readings. So with the 2 issues that are before them now, is 1 reading enough? And if they vote 7-0, or do we ask for that time in between for recommendations?
So the 3 readings is just based off of Robert's Rule of Order.
Okay.
And so you can make an amendment at any time before the adoption, the final reading and the final adoption. You can have it read 3 times, an amendment can be made and then adopted based off of that amendment. So usually what happens, at least at council level, is two readings are done on the same night, and the 3rd reading is done the following council meeting minute. So amendments, is so long as there's notice requirements, due process requirements, and everything, but amendments are permissible, and so long as those the permissibility of those amendments align with the Robert's Rules of Order, you don't need to wait for another reading. They can proceed based off of the amendment if adopted.
But these proposals from a commission will likely have 1 reading and a vote, and then that's it, yea or nay?
It really comes down to exactly the scope of the recommendation. So for instance, if the recommendation requires an ordinance change, then that would require 3 readings. And something like this recommendation with the vote with the streets, this would be an ordinance change, because you are changing the ordinance based off of what is currently permissible. And we would be disallowing certain parking or allowing parking now that was not originally permissible.
Thanks.
So this would require 3 readings and an ordinance change.
So this has been very, very helpful. Thank you for taking time to talk through this with us.
Absolutely. And I will be back at the next council meeting to give you an update on what we have been able to accomplish and give you hopefully a little bit more direction, especially on this Complete Streets initiative.
And a personal question, please, if you think I should attend a council meeting, please let me know. I'm certainly willing to do that. So
Will do. I greatly appreciate the willingness to do so.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have to make some time here. So we just talked about where we are with the parking policy change. The next question was Complete Streets, and we know kind of where that is right now.
And just missing from your agenda was the North Elm. I don't see that on there. That's the 3rd one that's in front of council, I think.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I had it on here, but I don't see it. You're right.
I think you put it in the other thing you sent out.
Maybe, maybe I did.
Yeah.
So I did get some feedback on that from Dr. Peoples, and and I thought maybe you were copied on that, but perhaps not. I have that right here. Why don't I just read it? Okay, in an effort to fully evaluate the feasibility of the road diet request, I had the police department, fire department, and public works department review and provide me recommendations. Unfortunately, based on the findings and the recommendations from police, fire, and public works, I cannot support the request. Should the Traffic Advisory Commission desire for the city council to consider the request without staff recommendations, please complete the attached meeting request form. So I brought that form with me.
So did she supply you with why they're against it?
I can read what the probably the most powerful response that came from the police department, and it's from the chief of police, and I can read that to you if you're interested.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear us okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. This is lengthy. The other option, I could send it out, but well, maybe we should just read through it very.
I mean, we've spent a lot of time on this.
We have,
and we have. I think that's the kind of thing it would be nice before a meeting to send out, perhaps.
Right. So let me just paraphrase. He speaks about the number of vehicles, the speed limits, and that kind of stuff. He says every roadway has unique characteristics requiring close analysis for suitability of traffic control related to signage, traffic calming, and applied safety measures. The 3-block section of North Elm is an arterial road which effectively and efficiently feeds north and south commuter traffic within the city's boundaries. It is most heavily traveled during morning and evening rush hours. Though the average traffic count is under 10,000 vehicles per day, the rush hour count is much larger. Lane reduction would most likely create severe bottlenecks and choke points on Elm, south in the morning, north in the evening. The Brentwood Boulevard to Marshall Avenue, and Brentwood Boulevard to Marshall Avenue. The result of such heavy congestion would be traffic seeking relief points and traveling alternate routes through surrounding residential neighborhoods. The most likely affected street would be South Gore, Gray Avenue, Maple, Newport, Marshall Place, and Moody Avenue. Okay, regarding the next paragraph, regarding the expectation of reduced motor vehicle accidents, a 5-year analysis determines an average of 5 per year, only 2 of which involve injuries, all minor. None involve bicyclists or pedestrians. In considering the 85th percentile speed of 44 miles per hour, the same NHSTA promoting road diets also suggests the 85th percentile speed as the standard established speed limit. None of the reported accidents in this section of Elm were caused by vehicles exceeding the speed limit. Only one was the result of a speed too fast for conditions. Though studies of many streets suggested a diet determined speed reductions, there are mixed results. As determined by a recent Virginia Transportation Research Council study of their entire state, results on the promise of reducing speed were mixed. Okay, now we're getting to kind of the crux of this. An examination of the literature related to road diets suggests their primary purpose is to promote a safe climate and speed and space for walkability along the along with encountering alternate means of travel. In many instances, not all, reduced accidents and speed are a positive byproduct. Areas similar to those in the Old Orchard District, where a road diet plan is scheduled for implementation, are the best candidates for this approach. The applicable section of North Elm holds no current potential for businesses or recreational purposes that would benefit from such a plan. Additionally, a 25-year anecdotal observation suggests pedestrians' use of this section is limited.
I wonder why.
and safe as supported by a long-term traffic study. In summary, if the plan's intent is primarily to create one in a network of safe streets that promote cycling and walkability, it will likely achieve that goal. If it is to discourage travel with while reducing speed limits and motor vehicle accidents, it likely will fail.
Wait, say that again. The first
Okay,
part.
so if the plan is to make the streets safer for walking and bicycles, it would improve it. It would achieve that goal. But if it is to discourage speeding and accidents, it probably won't make a difference. That's
It
basically.
absolutely will make a difference, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
It is also likely to result in significant traffic volume and accidents increases on the residential streets noted above. So a fairly strong letter expressing his belief that this would not be about.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
He mentioned a planned calming or diet in Old Orchard.
Yes, apparently that's.
Okay, why
it
were,
works.
I mean, that's
think
where I
it's
get confused with the commissions.
I think it's a county project because it's Big Bend.
Uh,
Yeah, it's a county road.
Okay,
So I think it's a county road, which it
so we
doesn't.
didn't, no, we
Yeah,
wouldn't
we
have
don't
been
have a say in
involved
that.
that.
Right.
Okay,
They actually just did a road diet on Big Bend. The county did, let's see, from about Berry Road, probably anybody who drives through there to the bridge over 44.
Right.
They
And
made the
that's
turn
where-
in the
yeah.
center, yeah.
And I can tell you, because I live in that area, anecdotally, or not even anecdotally, it did reduce speeds and calm traffic for sure, because people complain about it all the time. Because if you get behind someone doing the speed limit, then everyone's doing the speed limit. Nobody can
Exactly.
pass them. And that's what would happen here as well. So,
Exactly.
and I also want to point out, I'll just say for starters, I don't know that we can go toe to toe with the chief of police. But, you know, the whole point about this being a commuter route, it is restricted by a 2-lane segment all the way between Lockwood and Big Bend. So the need to have a 4-lane segment north of there feeding
For 3
Brentwood,
blocks.
yeah, is that I think that whole point is moot. There's no reason to have all those lanes. We have the turn lanes. We wouldn't take them away. We would still feed them. So while what I said initially, I don't know, you know, where we go from here. I do think that we could probably step through the argument and refute a lot of the points with as much research and detail as, you know, the chief had. I just don't know where that would get us. You know, I don't know if Dr. Peoples would then say, yeah, we don't really like that approach either, for you guys to be arguing with our staff. So
And I think if the point, and I think this is back, David, to the point of the complete streets policy. I mean, he says right there, if the point is to make this street better for everybody, it would work. But if it's just for cars, you know, screw you. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. And I think that what we're trying to say is that our streets in our town need to be for bicyclists, for pedestrians, for automobiles, and everything. And so he's sort of making our point that, you know what, that's sort of the recommendation of these, or to make them safer for everybody. And I don't know if there would be more fender benders because there's more traffic in one lane, but I certainly know it would slow the traffic down. I mean, that's just his statement that it would not slow traffic down is just not true. Because as Carrie says, there's only one lane as opposed to a speedway. And that's why this was brought to us, was the residents that live on that street said it's so dangerous for them to get out of their houses because cars are going down there 55 miles an hour. You know, we use that. Yeah, it's a 35-mile speed limit, but we go to the 85th percentile or whatever that is to really judge what it should be.
So I think you have exactly identified the issue that I'm struggling with here. I respect the chief of police. I tend to defer to him because he has the experience. But this is one where we're kind of caught in the middle because the people who live there are sincere in saying this is not right. And what do we do with that?
Well, we either decide to take it to city council with those I mean, we got the feedback. And so I think we have to make that decision. I think we need to sit on this. If you could forward that, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe an agenda item for our next meeting is, do we vote to present it without the support of the staff?
I think that's a good suggestion. Give us time.
I think that's fair, right? Because council's passed stuff when staff, regardless of whether it's the police department, fire department, or any other staff, has said no, or we shouldn't do this. Council still approved things, at least during my time. While we often defer to staff and their expertise, it doesn't mean that it's not what the community wants, and therefore that's what the community gets.
There were a couple items in the council meeting, I guess the pool one in particular, I went away thinking everybody recognizes that the pool was built 25 or 30 years ago. That's what was called for then. Council recognizes now that's not what people want now. So we have a chief of police that's got policies that have been in place for 25 years. Things have changed. So for me, it's the same argument. You know, we need to update our pool. We need to update some other things as well.
I agree with you.
And maybe after sitting on this for a month, maybe we say, you know, it'd be even better to have Chief Curtis and the fire department and Marie Peoples come to one of our meetings and just have a discussion about it, as opposed to sending something up doesn't have a shot.
Yeah, maybe they have alternatives. Maybe they have alternatives that you guys would be able to agree with that could come to a middle ground somewhere.
Well, and perhaps Chief Curtis has experienced situations like this before where we've made a change and it was a change for the best, but people who use that street will read that as making it more difficult for them to drive back and forth to work. And there will be some negative feedback.
Sure. I mean, there was, as Carrie said, there was negative feedback about Big Bend. Yeah. At first, usually it's at first. There was a lot of negative feedback about the bike lanes on Lockwood. And I walk there every day and it's so much better than it was as a 2 lanes.
Okay.
Yeah, negative feedback has died down. You know, like I think a lot of people, change is difficult for anyone. But I think that for the most part, especially when it comes to roads, people get used to it because you really don't have much of an option.
Right.
Yeah. Carrie, that you mentioned a particular study. I was thinking about asking about this in the first place. I mean, I like to read the data. Can you find the study that he mentions and forward that to us?
Yeah, I started Googling it as it was coming out. I just caught that it was VDOT, so Virginia DOT. But that's all I caught, but we can look for that.
Okay.
There's probably a million. Yeah, there's probably 1,000 studies, either way. So
yeah. Well, this is the one he's referring to. So
yeah, exactly. One other thing I wanted just to throw out there is we're considering this is I suspect and this is just historically speaking, that a big part of the pushback or negative I think gut reaction to this project would be how do we fund it? What's it going to take? And I'm wondering if this is something that, we have funds with the sustainability, with that joint task meeting, with the complete streets. And if this could be, we keep talking about maybe using some of those funds for a demonstration project. And if maybe we can say that this is, that's how we would endeavor to maybe coordinate and see if that's how we could fund something like this, or at least a demonstration out of it, maybe a temporary demonstration of striping, right. And maybe see how it works.
Because it's just paint. It's just paint.
Right. So for those of you that are sitting on that joint committee, I don't know what I missed the last meeting. So I don't know what the general group feeling would be if we asked to use some funds to do a demonstration, but I think we're looking for ideas and ways to do demonstrations. So just throwing that out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that we're going to discuss at the next meeting after you've had a chance to look at this material. Okay, next item.
You can get our road rage down.
What?
Or we can issue a number for your car for the race, because it's a race coming up that hill.
You're gonna have to study fire code too, because the fire chief's letters is just as bad as the chief's, but his is all about fire code and lane restrictions and apparatus and hose lengths and all that stuff.
Well, we're a little pain.
Thank you, Captain Perks. Yeah.
It's not just the chief.
Yeah. So the next item I had was the status of the traffic calming on South Elm. Where are we on that one?
Did we get car counts on anything yet, or is that still waiting for weather, or what were we waiting for?
I have not received any car counts.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's what it was. We were waiting on data.
You know,
Okay.
any on that?
I know Jason had his counters up, though his new counters up, but I
haven't received anything. I'll check him on that.
Okay. All right.
I know we have one out, but I have not received any car counts.
Okay, I'm making note of that.
we're testing some new toys.
Yeah, we got new toys, but
Yeah, so give us some
Okay,
time to figure it out.
we're learning that as well. It's new equipment, so we have to learn how to gather the data from that.
yeah. At the last meeting, we postponed discussion about the stop sign at Tuxedo and Yateman. We did not vote on that.
Yeah.
So is
I
there-
thought we said no, it's because the ADT was very low.
Right.
Yes, and we did go check that, and there is yield to oncoming traffic signs.
Oh, it's there.
Signage is all there.
Yeah, all the warning signs, just no stop sign. So
Right.
everything
We
but a
did go
stop
check
sign
that.
essentially.
And as I recall the discussion, there's not enough traffic to justify a stop
Yeah.
sign.
So
So do we need anything more to discuss in order to vote on
unless
this?
there's a recent fatality over there.
Yeah, there's no data for that intersection. There's no traffic.
Okay, do we have
What do we need to do? We just need to say we recommend we find this, or how do we?
I guess.
There really wasn't a recommendation that was made to it. It was a discussion.
It was a request on the part of the citizens in at that little spot.
Right.
So
And that was one that was brought up that part of the whole complete streets that was brought up, and maybe, possibly in the future to, cut that
Plants and
street.
grass.
that's
Plants
right.
and grass
yeah.
and
We're
cut
gonna
that-
make a
cut
park
that
out of
street
it.
off and that
I
kind
mean,
of thing.
anecdotally, because I drive that all the time, and I get that you're saying that it's
Uh-huh.
not, but I almost got hit there the other day, in my car, for someone who just zoomed right through, so I drive
And-
it probably every day.
Did they ignore a stop sign?
Yes,
Okay,
and I know there's nothing, no, the
yield.
oncoming yield,
The yield sign.
yes.
Fail the yield.
Yeah, but I know there's
Okay.
nothing. you can do.
right.
So, but I will say I drive it all the time, and it's not quite as safe to me as you're saying, but
And no fatalities.
no fatalities, no, I.
Thank heaven.
And
I'm still
unfortunately,
here.
we hear that all the time in law enforcement, and unfortunately, we can't track the almost.
Oh, yeah,
There's
right.
no way
I
to
know.
put statistical data on
I'm
that.
saying the
and
person who brought it up probably did have a good reason in their experience.
Understand,
So,
understand.
Do I have a motion?
Do we need a motion on this too, or?
I thought we did, I thought we sort of came to a conclusion last meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, we were just gonna check it if the signage was up, and which it is.
Which it is.
there.
Okay.
We all went and checked.
All right.
Yeah.
But do we have to circle back to that person?
I don't even know who brought it up. I don't-
Yeah. It was-
Oh, okay, yes,
yeah,
that's
it was-
right.
It was an email from me.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right. So no action.
Yeah, that was no action.
Got it. Okay, well. I apologize if I brought it.
No big deal.
Okay,
And a lot of those things, Chris, that we do, we handle, like, we had another one, it was a similar street that there was no yield oncoming traffic sign, which we have a blanketed ordinance on that.
uh-huh,
So we went and looked at it, and there wasn't one, and we just sent a memo to the Public Works, put up a yield
it's
sign.
done. Yeah.
They put up a yield sign.
Well, I would hate to think, I mean, I think that the goal for you in having us, for the police department having us, is to kind of take some of the heat.
No.
Well, no, seriously, because if you say no, then it's those bad police guys. If we say no, then it's your neighbor, then.
Yeah, they said no.
They did. Anyway,
I don't have a problem saying no.
okay.
You can say yes sometimes, but it's always like, yeah, I'm sorry.
The next bullet I have is the residential request for restricted parking on North Northport. Northport.
Oh, Newport.
Oh, you're probably right. It probably was Newport.
It was right between Kirkham and Glen, right there. Yeah, that where you get the bob and weave.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, hey, I grew up over there, so I understand what it's like. So
Yes.
So is that something that we need to address?
We have
What
not.
can be done?
I know we could probably restrict one direction, but then you probably piss off half of the people.
Half the street there.
Yeah.
There has been residential parking on both sides of that street for the 26 years I've been here.
Yeah. Ever since I've been alive here,
So they're talking, I mean, but this straight part is from up the hill. So are you just talking the curve there between Kirkham and?
no, is it that whole? I think
That whole stretch from.
Yeah, because obviously
That's
you
the
be a
request.
box truck coming through there, you gotta yield to that box truck and let it come through. Even a big enough, like, 1-ton
Some
truck.
people yield. And some people.
Oh, yeah, it's basically game of chicken.
Yeah.
It's fun.
But again, I'm thinking that the volume probably isn't enough to justify
Well,
it.
there's volume.
There's volume there.
That would be one again where we would have, we would have to look at the street widths, all those things that you had all talked about in your
Right.
parking initiative and everything. And
Right.
that would be one where we would, sit back and wait to see how we do with the street widths and all that, and then apply that as a generalized
Well,
thing.
that's probably the right thing to do, right?
Otherwise, you'd have to think about getting
Right.
petitions from the street and all the neighbors, and then like, again, Paul's saying that you're talking half the neighbors would get angry, and then those houses don't have driveways. Some
Okay,
do, some don't.
so we should,
That's a consideration.
Exactly.
so we should postpone this until we get a response back on the parking.
I would think so. That would be my recommendation to you all accept that.
Okay,
Because some of those houses have driveways, some don't, and then they do park on both sides of the
That's just
street
sort of one
there.
of those things where it just is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be great, but if they don't have driveways and there's no, I don't know what the answer would be.
And I can pull the accident data there, but I can tell you, we don't recall, we don't work accidents there.
Yeah, it's basically playing game of chicken essentially.
We don't have the accidents on that.
fortunately, we don't have too many aggressive chickens on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last one I had, that we held over was the request for a lower speed limit on Kirkham, north of Elm. And I
Oh,
think you were
that would
gonna,
mean Gore.
Between that, yeah, and I did pull the statistical data on that, and in a 5-year period, we had 5 auto crashes, or 5 or 6, out to my email. One, which was a police vehicle responding to an emergency call, and it got flooded out.
Yep.
Which was an auto crash, and I put that data out to you all, I believe.
okay,
2 of the auto crashes were single vehicle crashes involving a medical issue, which means the driver had a medical issue and hit the curb, which is an auto crash.
okay,
2 of the other ones, none of them involved speed whatsoever. So that is one where we would have to do a speed study, waiting for the speed.
okay.
Did you say north of Elm?
It's
It's between Elm and Gore.
Between Elm and Gore.
So that's not
Kirkham.
north of Elm.
No, it's Kirkham between Brentwood and Gore.
between Brentwood and Gore. Okay.
And it does go from 35
Or
to
between Elm and
30
or
to
25.
25.
Once you get past Rock Hill.
Rock Hill.
One in the Glendale.
So it's not Brent, it's
It's Kirkham,
Elm, Kirkham, between Elm and.
between Elm and Gore.
Right.
So just so I'm following, is the plan to get speed data then on that segment?
Yes, ultimately.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we're gonna wait for data.
Yeah, we just gotta be. That's a problem. We have limited resources, and it just takes time to collect the data on all the streets that we gotta get data on.
So, and we keep asking for more and more and more and more. Okay, that is all I have for old business. Do you have new business for tonight? Okay. Anybody? Yes, Steve.
I have one incident that happened a couple of weeks ago. Basically, I'd like your feedback to it, but it might be educational for all of us. So in my block, which there's issues. I was out front and I noticed an officer had stopped, was talking to somebody in a car. And so when he was pulling away, and I saw him go over and talk to the tree trimming crew on the other side of the street. He's pulling away. I said, "Hey, what's up?" And he says, "Well," he said, "what do I do?" He says, "Both sides are parked illegally. One was an automobile, the other side was a tree removal company's trailer." He says, "Both are parked legally. I don't know who came first." This is about 1 in the afternoon, and he said, So I'm driving away, you know, and so I went out there and measured metal to metal. It was 8 foot 5 inches. Was a clearance.
Both are parked legally or
Both are parked legally.
legally?
Yeah. So the trailer was a super wide trailer.
Gotcha.
And I'm thinking, man, if that's the situation, you know, if that's the answer, I mean, I guess I get it. But thank God there wasn't a fire there or whatever, you know.
What do you do? He probably got a complaint.
He did.
And
Yeah,
that's
the fellow who complained was still, it was a driver, and he had stayed wait for the police because he had a squeeze through. I don't think he had any damage done, but he said, I'm fed up with it.
Unfortunately, in that situation, there is nothing we can do. There's
What was
nothing
the hours
legally
that,
we can do.
It was not 1 in the afternoon.
1 afternoon, because so that's regular working hours for
Right.
the street, so that's where they're allowed to do that. Now, if it was after 4, then
Yeah.
technically he could be cited
Right.
for obstructing traffic. So that's where I think on smaller streets, I think it's like anything after 4:30.
Yeah.
And then anything on the Elm, it's like 3:30, because we've had it happen when they were doing.
Better road
the-
diet.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and it's like, hey, you gotta go or you're gonna get ticketed, and that's
Yeah.
where Jason becomes a real fun person to deal with.
During working business hours and that, construction crews and that, they do have
Yeah.
the wider equipment and that.
Yeah,
because it's legally parked.
Yeah.
Well, I learned something. I wasn't aware that there were times of day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so
Yes.
So usually it's like around, they have to let us know if they want to start any earlier, but we try to limit to around like a full working day. So if they start at 7:30, they have to be out by 3:30, 4 o'clock, and they have to let us know. But normally it's, 8 and 4 is about the usual working hours. Cause
I
like,
think these vehicles are wider than the normal.
Yeah,
one.
Yes.
so, and it's like, well, again, we can't, it's like, well, you have a concrete truck pulling, I was like, well, what, no? And it's like, well, okay, now you're.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
that's a good example.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. Yeah.
so.
Steve, I hope,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I hope you took a picture. That will help us
Well,
later.
I went out there with my tape measure and hooked it on the one guy's, fender and took it across the street to the other, so I can verify that. And frankly, I drove through that twice that day, and I've got a little car, it was parked right out front here, and it was tight. I mean, so I'm having a hard time imagining 8-foot lanes on South Elm, being safe. So, I just with coming traffic and 8 foot 5 inches is pretty tight squeeze.
I don't,
Yeah.
we weren't talking about 8 foot 5 inches though, right? Is that a reference to something we discussed?
Well, the one recommendation was 8 foot wide lanes and then I forget how wide the street was, but do you remember what the recommendation was on South Elm for?
Yeah, I think it was 11-foot lanes.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, all right, okay.
Yeah.
So 8 foot wide, my truck would not make it through that. I got a full size.
Yeah,
pickup truck.
no, I wouldn't talk into it.
I would not make it through that.
Yeah. so
No, a
normally-
minimum driving lane is usually 10 feet at a very minimum.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
I'm feeling a little stressed here because we're a little beyond time. But we only have one issue left to discuss, and that was last time Carrie asked to be relieved of duty or as the vice chair, and we were going to select or ask for volunteers to become a new vice chair of this commission. Do I have anyone interested? Don't all speak at once.
Can we nominate others? Or is that next?
I think that's next. But I don't see anyone excited about filling that role. The next thing would be suggestions.
I wanted to nominate Clark Hoteling.
No wonder why you didn't show up.
Yeah.
I second it, and I'm gonna.
I literally, and this is why I had to step down. I literally just got off another meeting call right at 5:30. So
And reiterate the duties
So primarily,
if you're gone.
if I'm gone, and my wife and I travel a fair amount, so, it's gonna happen a time or two each year. But I feel uncomfortable asking someone to serve who really doesn't want to.
No, I would.
Thank you.
All right.
it's very manageable, Clark. It's just, it's very manageable. It's just that I tripled my workload this year. So I just.
Understand.
Well, if you are willing, we would love to have you.
Thank you, Clark.
Do we need to vote on this?
I guess the motion to nominate and then second, I believe.
Okay, do I have
I second. Carrie.
Carrie?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Clark.
Is there a requirement that we live next to each other?
Within 3 doors, I think. Yeah,
We do.
we do. We meet the
There's
requirements.
one house in between us.
Yeah.
Captain Burt, you mentioned about what the fire department's reaction with a chief and shit that's bad, and will we get a copy of that?
It's
If I have it, I'll send it to you.
It's in the email.
Is it in the email?
Yeah.
Okay.
All of the
I thought I
department
copied them all,
heads,
but maybe I didn't.
all of their letters, along with everything is attached to the email he was sent, because I was on the email chain.
Okay, yeah.
And
So
all of it's in
he's
there.
gonna forward that email to us then?
Yeah. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Okay, thank you all. It was a productive evening. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
And could you not get off mute or something?
I'm here. I said thank you.
Okay, all right, good to see you.
Bye.
I thought it was just a thank you, there for
It was really me. I've got my history final exam tomorrow morning, and I was like, I can't do a meeting tonight. Got too much going on. Thanks, guys. Huh?
You weren't like those high school kids who logged in during COVID and then went to the soda shop and.
Nope, I was here running after a toddler. Bye, guys.
Good to see you.